Good afternoon, everybody. It's great to be able to join you this afternoon. My name is Jo Hendrickx. I'm the founder of Travel Without Plastic, and I've worked in plastic and waste reduction in hotels since 2011, subsequently founding Travel Without Plastic in 2017 so that we could focus specifically on supporting tourism businesses with this topic. And we have a range of online tools and support services. And thanks to Anula, we're able to make some of those available in Russian. If you would like to know more about that, I'd invite you to connect with Anula for additional information if you haven't already done so. So today we don't have a lot of time. I'm going to cover why it's important for the tourism sector to tackle issues associated with single-use plastic products, and share some practical examples and inspiration and some of the results that others are achieving and that have already taken steps on this journey. So first and foremost, why is it so important that we tackle plastic pollution in the tourism sector? Well, plastic pollution and the impacts it causes is of increasing concern around the world. And by far the most popular legislation at the moment is linked to plastic bags, with 127 countries having some sort of regulation in place around their use. The most robust legislation at the moment is the EU directive that will be enforced in July next year. And that prohibits the use and sale of certain types of single-use plastic products, many of which are used in the tourism and hospitality sector. And subsequently, we've seen destinations both within and outside of the EU use this directive as inspiration to plan for similar or sometimes even stricter controls on single-use plastic products. In some Caribbean islands, for example, they never expected that legislation would impact them, but suddenly islands such as Bonaire have made the decision to follow the EU and to keep to the same dates. Now, this gives them relatively little time to plan and react. So from a business perspective, it certainly makes sense to be ahead of this trend if you can. Also, consumers are ready to adapt to this. According to a UN WTO report, Europe continues to be the world's largest source region for outbound tourism. And so it's inevitable that consumers from these countries will become less and less tolerant of single-use plastic as they quickly adapt to legislation themselves. Now, we often advise businesses not just to pay attention to legislation in their own destination, but to think about the expectations of their customers. Where I live in the Canary Islands, they're Spanish islands just off the coast of West Africa, 8 out of 10 people here are directly or indirectly employed by tourism. It's a huge influencing sector for us. And in the winter, our biggest market are Northern European customers, and you can actually hear them complain to hotel reception staff about plastic. They openly tell staff that they won't visit that hotel again because they're so uncomfortable with the amount of waste that's produced from it. So it really does play to be ahead of the game and consider the consumer perspective when looking at plastic reduction. Then, of course, there's the environmental impacts, not just of plastic pollution as litter, but also the toxic gases created during its production. Only 9% of all of the world's plastic today has been recycled. I believe the figure is lower than that, around 5 or 6% in Russia. We certainly can't recycle our way out of this problem. We need to reduce our consumption. Otherwise, we're going to carry on impacting wildlife in these ways, but also we're going to keep feeding plastic into our own food chain. A study in Australia recently suggests that we could actually, as human beings, be inhaling or swallowing the equivalent of a credit card of plastic every single week. So the choice is ours. We're either going to be a part of the solution or we're going to be a part of the problem. And many travel companies and hotel groups are already leading the way and making public commitments to reduce or eliminate unnecessary single-use plastic products. Some of them are even striving to take all items of plastic out of operations completely. And these types of stories, they make headlines. There's even an online travel company, responsibletravel.com. They actually sell plastic-free holidays, and people are using these search terms. People are looking for this. So how do you do it as a business? And this that you see on the screen, this is our mantra. This is what we say every day to everybody we speak to, is that we need to prioritize processes and not products. So what do we mean by this? If your business currently uses single-use plastic items now, then we would really encourage you to follow the principles of what's known as the waste hierarchy when you make decisions about change. We believe that we should be in the business of reducing waste, not simply replacing single-use plastic with another single-use material. And I'll share a couple of examples that demonstrate how you can eliminate single-use plastic, completely. You don't replace it with a product. Maybe you replace it with a service, or you replace it with reusable alternatives instead. We would highly recommend prioritizing your actions based on preventing consumption in the first place and minimizing waste, rather than just simply switching single-use plastic for single use of another material. So let's look at how you could do this by choosing a couple of products that we can use as examples. So for instance, removing miniature toiletries that we often find in guest rooms, shampoo, shower gel, those types of things. This has actually become quite a popular action because of COVID-19. And when you think about it, it makes quite good sense. The more items that you have in a guest room, the more surfaces there are for bacteria and viruses to stick to. It becomes harder and more time consuming for housekeeping staff to clean and to sanitize. Therefore, removing as many surfaces as possible helps to prevent the transmission of germs. And this has become very acceptable by guests, many of whom travel with their own toiletries anyway. And of course, then there's a huge financial saving for the hotel, as well as reducing waste. If you choose to do this, we always state that soap or hand washing gel, some way to be able to, for people to wash their hands, should still always be provided as an obvious hygiene service. And for hotels that don't want to completely remove the service of toiletries and amenities, many of them are now making these available on request. Some are even offering a zero waste amenities menu, which is a great way to raise awareness with guests, but also to generate an additional revenue stream. And of course, refill is a great idea for business hotels or for city centre hotels where guests may only stay a couple of nights, for instance, and they travel light. So perhaps they're not coming with their own toiletries. There are very, very good quality refill systems now that are available, that are safe, that are hygienic. And we have a blog on our Travel Without Plastic website about the hygienic refill of toiletry systems, if you would like to read that. We don't have the time, obviously, to go into all of the details here. It's a similar approach with bottled water, and we quite often talk about bottled water. Most of the hotels that we work with, this is the #1 plastic item that generates the most significant amount of waste. And not only does refilling of water reduce waste, it can save on space, it can reduce costs associated with refrigerating water, it saves time from staff having to load and unload bottles and deliveries and prepare for waste collection. And it's interesting, having travelled through Southeast Asia, I see that water refills are actually very popular by advertising this on the doors and windows of restaurants and cafes. they actually attract new customers in that would spend money on coffee or snacks and meals. So it's actually a really good way to attract new business and not to lose money. So it's a different way of thinking about it. And increasingly popular with hotels is to filter and bottle your own water. And then, of course, this bottled water can be offered for sale. So it enables you to continue generating an income whilst reducing waste and significantly reducing cost. Now, obviously, if you have no other choice but to use single use, then we are very clear that it's really important to choose materials that are most likely to be recycled in your destination and to purchase items that are already made from recycled content. But it is very, very important that we remember that whilst recycling is a good place to start, it's a terrible place to stop. As I said earlier, we can't recycle our way out of a plastic pollution crisis, certainly not the one that we're in now, and we have to reduce our consumption of single use in the first place. But if you are stuck, if there are no other options for you, and if the reusable and the refillable alternatives aren't there, then it's a good place to start. But rethink your strategy, revisit your strategy as more and more alternatives and innovative services are very, very likely to come to market in the coming years. Given the situation that we're all facing at the moment, it's also worth touching here on how to meet hygiene expectations without using unnecessary single-use plastic products. And certainly providing COVID kits is not a good idea in terms of waste reduction. In fact, many single-use items like masks and gloves are not actually used properly by many people, and they're more likely to spread germs than to prevent the spread of germs. Hotels that we work with have seen it's actually much better to make refillable sanitizing units widely available and encourage guests to use these instead. Certainly, it's worth avoiding single-use cleaning wipes. These are actually terrible from an environmental perspective. 99% of them are made from plastic fibres, even though it may not look that way, and they can't be flushed. Many of them are marketed as flushable on the packet, but actually, if they go into a water system, they'll either cause problems for you directly in the hotel and your technical services teams, as they will block your plumbing systems, or they'll cause problems further down the line in sewers or by making it out into natural environments. So we would highly recommend avoiding these where possible, using reusable cleaning cloths that are made from natural materials, and to really think about your cleaning processes in terms of hygiene rather than the use of single-use products. Now, we are very realistic. We know that in some cases you may be obliged by legislation or by local regulations to use single-use. And if that's the case, then we believe that the minimum that businesses can do is to take all possible steps to dispose of waste responsibly and to help guests understand how to dispose of waste responsibly so that it doesn't become litter. So if the least that we can do is really to prevent this plastic waste getting out into natural environments, and that's a great step. You know, if that's the only thing that you can do right now while you work out what your plan is going to be in terms of reducing plastic, then that's great to make sure that you do that. Many people that we speak to today are motivated to change because of the negative environmental, social and health impacts of plastic that we've very briefly covered. But not everybody cares about those things, and it may be that you also need to look at the business case, or there are people within your business that need to be convinced by the financial statistics or by the reputation of the hotel. Now, these are some actual statistics that we've converted into Russian currency to demonstrate the financial savings of some simple changes that have been made by hotels that we're working with right now, and that also show that positive reputational impact that comes when guests know why you are making those changes. They're much more likely to support a change if they understand why you're doing it, and if you actually continue to promote your achievements as well. People love to be part of a good news story. They love to be part of having created a positive change. And so if you can tell your guests this through communications, through your website, through using your staff to talk to guests about why you're making these changes and those impacts, then you're more likely to take your customers on that journey with you. We've covered a lot very quickly here. I'm aware in the short space of time that we have today. So if you'd like to connect with us to find out more about what we do, and to visit our website to read some of the blogs that will give you some additional information into what you can do differently, then please connect with us on the social media or via the website on the contact details that you have here. And with that, I'll finish and wait to take questions in the Q&A at the end of the session. Thank you very much.